Hello, it's Lydia from Hen Hill Cut Flowers here. Welcome to the latest episode. You're joining me on the plot for tea time. I thought we'll go in and feed everybody together. Hey guys, how are we doing? There we go. It has been really hot today. I thought yesterday was bad enough. It was about 38 degrees yesterday, which was horrendous actually, like really, really horrendous. And I was quite excited about today. It was supposed to be about 33, but it's felt a lot hotter than that today. Bless the chickens. They seem to have coped really, really well with it, which is quite amazing because if I had a feathery jacket on, I don't know how I would feel about it. Anyway, I have so much to tell you about in tonight's episode, so let's get started. Just as I was about to press record, I had one of those government alerts come through on the phone where it makes this sort of weird beeping, ringing noise. And you get this like severe notification from the government, which just said, don't have any portable barbecues or bonfires or fireworks or anything like that. Actually, I don't think it said bonfires. It should have done. They should have sent it out a month ago. I mean, it's really, really late in the day now to be telling people not to be doing these silly things, but there we go. Did you watch the eclipse on Wednesday? I went to see it. I didn't order glasses in time, even though it's obviously been happening years ahead, but it wasn't on my radar. So I made myself one of those pinhole things with a long roll of empty roll of kitchen paper and some tin foil, and it didn't work. So that was really disappointing. I thought it was going to, and then at the crucial moment, it didn't. So I watched most of it on the TV, and then I could actually get a really good view of it through two sets of patio doors. So one of the doors was open, so there were basically two panes of glass right together. And I managed to actually look at it without any glasses on, without burning my eyes through these double panes of glass. And I have to say, it wasn't as dramatic as I thought it was going to be. I thought it was going to be something like from the movies, really, end of days, apocalypse style stuff, and everything goes dark, and it was supposed to like disturb all the birds, and everything was going to be, very dramatic. And it really wasn't. It looked like a kind of a cloud had passed in front of the sun. So the light levels definitely dropped, and I didn't hear any bird song at that point. But otherwise, it really was a little bit disappointing. And the footage on the TV was obviously amazing because they put loads of filters in front of the cameras, so you could see it very dramatically. But yeah, just ever so slightly disappointing. But it was kind of cool to be out on the street, chatting to people who were taking photos and looking at it. So that was kind of nice, I guess. So a shout out, after my last episode, I talked about my little girl Goose passing away, which was very sad. And thank you if you sent me a message. I had a really, really lovely one from a listener. I think I've decided just not to read anybody's names out, because I know not everybody wants to be acknowledged or have their name read out or anything else. So I'm just going to anonymize everything, which I'll come back to that in a second. But one of my listeners sent me a really, really touching message about Goose, and I'm sure you all know who you are, and it was very nice of you to write to me. Thank you if you've left a review. I know a couple of people have already been in touch to say they've left a review, and that is very much appreciated. I might have trouble actually seeing what you actually wrote because I'm still working out how all of this works. And I understand now that Spotify doesn't even let you write a review. It's just literally a rating. So that's that. And in terms of the text the show here button, there's like a link at the bottom of the show notes, and it says something like text me here or text the show here. And that doesn't actually send me a text message, it sends me an email. And that is also completely anonymous. So somebody sent me a really lovely message and said, don't read out my name. And that is totally fine. But I don't have your name anyway, don't have your number. I'm allowed to send one message back as a reply, and then that's it. And that's limited to 160 characters, which is really not very much. And I didn't realize, so I wrote a massive long thing. And then I saw that I couldn't send it because I'd written too much. So the point I'm getting at is that I appreciate everything that you do. I'm very, very grateful. I hope the increase in the ratings will help other people to see the podcast and think, oh, this might be something worth listening to. And then we have an even bigger community, which is amazing. Now, after Goose passed away, I made the executive decision to relocate Danny, Kermie and Mo from their enclosure. So I basically had to create a VIP enclosure after Goose's bottom got damaged. She couldn't go in with any of the cockerels because I didn't want any accidents, and I didn't want anybody pecking at her bottom or her wound. I mean, it healed up perfectly, but it wasn't, it was just always a little bit iffy. So I made like a VIP space for Goose. And then she had Molly, and obviously Molly passed away a month or so ago. So I put Kermie, her daughter, in with her, and then gradually we ended up with Danny and Mo. And Danny and Mo, Danny's like a little pigeon. She's a very strange little bird, and she is much more like a pigeon, to be honest. She looks like a pigeon, and she just gets picked on constantly. So she ended up going in there to stop her getting picked on. And then Mo is always constantly getting picked on. She's my only white bird, and all the others just have a really strong dislike of her. I think actually, well, Mo is exactly like her mother, who was also called Mo. And Mo's a fiercely independent bird. She's always trying to escape, and she's always like just literally has her own program in life and isn't hugely popular. And so anyway, after Goose passed, I thought, right, well, you three don't need to be in the VIP enclosure anymore. I will put you in with Kung Fu Mo Lee and his girls. And that didn't work out because I'd just forgotten the extent to which Danny and Mo get bullied. Mo broke out immediately because she's just so clever. She went and found the weakest point in the fencing and crawled through it. And the others just got picked on. And do you know what? The worst thing about it was that the empty enclosure just made Goose's loss amplified. It was just horrible. And every time I came up to the field, I was like, oh, there's an empty enclosure. That's because Goose is gone. And it made me really sad. So I have put them back. So Danny, Kermie, and Mo are now back in the VIP enclosure, and they're so much happier. And they're just nice to each other as well. They're a really tight little unit. And it's funny how the hens just make their friends. Like, they have a pecking order, which is pretty brutal, that the ducks don't have. The ducks are just all nice to each other all the time. But the chickens kind of make their friends. You'd never really think it unless you keep chickens, but they kind of make their friends, and then they've got their friend group, and then they just sort of hate everybody else. And then there'll be a pecking order within their friendship group, but they get quite tight with their friendship groups. And if you just kind of let them work out their groups, it's very interesting. So I've now got 3 sets of 4 birds who are just like all best friends, and they are their own little crew. They're like own little like ride or die group, and that seems to work very well. Molly's just trying to do something adult with one of them, and that's not going down well. Mo Lee, actually, very good news about Mo Lee. So he was born last year, and you'll probably remember this. He only had one ear, which is something. Oh, that's lion. Something that I've never come across before. And he literally, it was just completely closed over. There was just no little tiny ear hole or anything. And his eye just never looked particularly good either. So I just sort of, I think he's always been a little bit blind in his left eye. Anyway, birds are remarkable, the animals are remarkable. They just kind of adapt. So he adapts. He's probably only seeing the world in 2 dimensions, because chickens have to turn their heads left and right to look at the same thing in order to get a 3D picture. But he manages. Anyway, he had this swelling under his ear, which started not long after he was born. It's gradually been getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And it's one of those places where I really didn't want to take him to the vet, because I just thought, I really don't want them operating on him that close to his eye and to his brain and everything. It would be like fiddly sort of microsurgery. And I thought, I'll just sit with it for a while and just see what happens. And it didn't seem to cause him any pain or distress or discomfort or anything. But the other day, there was like a little tiny hole in this lump, and he basically got, if you know chickens, it was basically like bumblefoot in this sort of fleshy part under his ear, which was just an infection, probably caused by some parts of his ear which had never formed properly when he was, well, before he was even hatched out of his chick. So we've cleaned all that up. The swelling's gone down, and his eye is now open a little bit more, which is very good news. So bless him. He's doing very well. So yeah, the heat. Oh my goodness, the heat has just been absolutely unbearable. I'm so happy to think that it's actually all over now. Like, this could be it. The sky's clouded over this evening. It's about, what time is it? 7:30. It's clouded over, and I'm thinking, yes. Do you know, I have this fantasy about putting a jumper on. I mean, honestly, I'll listen back to this at the winter and I'll wonder what I was ever complaining about. But I have literally a fantasy about putting a jumper on, and a jumper with really, really long sleeves. You know, the ones that like come down over your wrists and you can just properly snuggle into it and all you can see is your fingernails. Like, I love jumpers like that. I have really, really, really long arms for some reason. My other half calls them like my gorilla arms because for some reason my arms are just very, very long. And I find it difficult to find sweaters that are long enough for me. So anyway, that's a side issue. Yeah, I'm just fantasizing about putting a jumper on with really long sleeves. Like, I want to be cold just just for a day, just to really get rid of this heat. It's been horrendous. The only bonus is that I'm drinking cans of Pepsi Max and eating giant hula hoops absolutely guilt free, because there's just so much sweating and loss of salts, and Pepsi Max is really the only thing that hits the spot. Now, on the field, what have I been doing? I've got loads to tell you about, actually. I have been painstakingly labeling all of my roses. So, I always say to you, you've got to label everything, and you absolutely do. It's very important. But when I put my roses in, because I'd bought them in bulk and I had sort of fives of each one, and I've got about 60 scattered around. And I thought, I tell you what I'll do. I'll make a plan on a piece of paper and I'll sketch out where I put them in blocks. And then I don't need to label them, because I think I felt at the time like, oh, I'm doing this on a semi-industrial scale, like 50 is semi-industrial. I mean, honestly, but the things I tell myself. So I was like, I'm not going to label every single one because I've got five of each one. So we'll just do a plan on a piece of paper. And then I had this heart stopping moment the other day where I couldn't find the piece of paper. And this, of course, is the downside to just writing things on pieces of paper. Couldn't find the paper anywhere. And eventually I found it and I thought, right, this means this is a sign that I need to actually go and label all of those roses. So I was doing that over the weekend, and that not over the weekend. Sorry, I think I did that a couple of days ago, Tuesday, I think. So I've done all that, and I feel very happy with that. And the labels are cable tied on to the plants, like very loosely, obviously, nothing tight whatsoever. But I don't like using like little bits of wire or string. They've got to be on there and they've got to stay on there for a while. So that was a very good job that I've done. I have been mulching again. You'll think that's all I do, and honestly, it feels like it at the moment. I mean, the chip bark doesn't stay on the ground forever. It does get incorporated in, even though all the activity is quite slow in the last few months. I have noticed that the bark just kind of wiggles off, partly, I think, because I'm on a slope, and then sometimes I walk on it and it gets squashed a bit. So I put a really, really nice thick layer all around the dahlias again to try and keep them going. And I've just been doing some tidying up because I hadn't realized, I think I told you, until I stood on the top of the transit van when we were trying to unload the IBCs and actually looked over the whole of the field, just how messy it had got. And I got very focused on just looking at the flowers when I come in and not necessarily all of the mess, because eventually you just stop seeing it, right? You just tune it all out and you just accept it's there, normally all around the edges, but I don't fixate on it. But now I'm like, right, there aren't enough flowers on the actual field. Now I'm going to fixate on all the weeds and all the nettles around the outside. So I've been sorting all that out and tidying all that up. And I'm just about to start harvesting seeds. And somebody mentioned casually the other day, like, what are you going to do about the podcast if you're not doing annuals anymore? And I was like, well, hopefully everyone will still carry on listening. I hope you will, because there will still be absolutely masses to talk about. And the clarification is that I'm going to do autumn sown annuals this year, like imminently, rather than the spring ones. So I will still be doing annuals. I'm just going to be doing them now, not in February, March time. So there'll still be loads to tell you about. So hopefully you will still carry on tuning into that. So I want to get all the seed collected. I thought we were going to have rain on Monday or Tuesday, but it looks like the forecast has changed yet again. But it's going to be coming, and so many of the seeds are absolutely ripe for picking at the moment. So I've got to make the most of this dry spell. So I want to get them all collected, bagged up, actually properly labeled, and then sort the beds out, put some deep litter down, maybe chuck a bit of compost on the top if I've got anything left that's good enough to use at the bottom of the heaps. And then I'm going to direct sow the seed, put a bit more compost on the top, add a bark mulch to the surface, label the bed, and then just leave them Oh, chickens, Molly. Oh dear. Right. Leave the beds and then just see what happens in the spring. So I'm going to have super low expectations, so I'm not upset. Hopefully, you won't hear me crying on here in about January, February when everything has died. And I'm just going to see what happens. It's going to be an experiment. And if it doesn't work, it is not the end of the world. I'm still not wanting to do all of that crazy annual sowing in the spring. So I will probably, knowing me, end up doing something. So it's not like I'm never going to sow an annual in the spring ever again. I know what'll happen, best laid plans and all of that. But that is what I'm thinking about doing at the moment. So I've got my eye on the seeds which need harvesting right now. I thought I'd also just run through some of the key things that I have learnt in this drought. So I don't know exactly how many days it's been now since we've had rain. I mean, it's got to be like May time. I'm sure. I'm sure. I don't think I've had anything since May. Anyway, it's been a very, 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 very long time. And I thought I've got a list here of 6 things. I had to write them down because I'll forget them. So forgive me. Number one is that keeping ducks off grid is really not a good idea if you don't have a proper supply of water. I mean, the hens hardly get through any water at all, but the ducks are just ridiculous. Even though I reuse their water and I throw it onto the flower field where they are adjacent to, they still get through, I mean, quite a bit of water every day because they have a children's swimming pond and they've got washing up bowls everywhere, and it's just a lot of water. So definitely, if you're starting out and you're thinking, "Oh, I'll get some ducks or some chickens," I would say definitely don't get ducks unless you're on the mains because it's just, yeah, it's just they are quite a commitment. And I wouldn't have it any other way, but it's just something that you really notice in a drought year. To when water is so precious, um, to hand it over to them just for them to just do loads and loads of runny poo in it and make a terrible mess. It's like it's hard to watch that. Number two on my list, well, obviously this is going to be harvesting water, and this is like the most crucial thing. So you know that I used to have 3 IBCs, the 1,000 litre ones, and then about a month ago I went and bought 3 more. So I've got the potential to store 6,000 litres of water on site, which, sounds quite a lot. The IBCs are quite a decent size, and you think, oh, 6,000 litres. But honestly, I could get through, I could get through one of them pretty quickly, to be honest, if I was being generous. And I really do need to be generous. That's something else that I've learned on the field this summer. So I think what I'm going to do is just keep half an eye out for IBCs throughout the course of the winter and just keep acquiring some more, because along with all the other techniques that I want to adopt in order to save more water and use water better, definitely having more water on the field feels better than not having enough water on the field. So, not just more IBCs, more guttering on the existing buildings, and more structures for guttering. So, every single drop needs to be saved. And I'm looking at other structures on the field that I don't actually have anything to do with, but I'm looking at everything now going, yep, put a bit of gutter on you, bit of gutter on you, a little bit of gutter on you, and then I might just hash some stuff together with some corrugated iron sheets that are lying around and just put some water butts at the end of those as well. Definitely need to be collecting as much as possible. I really wish I could afford a borehole. And in my fantasy world, I'd have one of those installed, which would be an absolute game changer for up here. But the cost of those means that is not going to happen. Number 3 on my list, I've mentioned this and I keep yakking on about this. Don't grow spring sown annuals. So this field is absolutely not for them. And it has spent all summer saying to me, Lydia, please don't plant anything else in here because we just can't support it. They really didn't know what hit them. So they got started out in my kind of cheap and quick and dirty home compost. So they don't start off the seedlings in anything rich and expensive and fancy. So it's not like they had a huge shock to the system. but it still was a bit of a shock to the system coming up here. And the mistake that I made, which I really didn't realize how significant this would be, is that all of the annuals, with a couple of exceptions, went onto the new beds that were only made last summer. So a very nice man called Nigel came with a digger, scraped all the turf off, and I made some beds. And I didn't do, I mean, I did a whole no dig thing, but I didn't do the whole no dig where you put loads of cardboard down and then import all of this compost and you make all of this stuff, because I just didn't have the money to buy the compost. So I kind of improved the beds myself, put lots of deep litter from the chickens in, put some compost down, and kind of thought, yeah, this will be okay, because the annuals, they don't live for very long. There isn't a huge, great, whacking great plant that needs to be supported. It'll be fine. But what I didn't factor in, obviously, was heat waves and drought. So, of course, the poor things didn't do as well as I think they could have done. Having said that, not everything was terrible, but the AMI was been absolutely fantastic, and I sowed that myself. The agrostemma, again, absolutely fantastic. Couldn't fault that, and I sowed that myself. The tenders have been amazing. The grasses have been amazing. But it's just some things have been absolutely dreadful, like the cosmos, which I'm never ever growing again. Even if I had like £1 million to invest in all this infrastructure and fields, like I officially am never growing cosmos again. Now, number 4 is to water generously much earlier on in the season. Don't wait. So, what did I do? I kind of waited. I did a bit of a tough love thing. And I think I'd probably be a bit mortified if I listened back to the earlier episodes from spring. I certainly didn't water the perennials, but to be honest, they've been fine, although I have been supporting them recently. But I just didn't have like a crazy generous watering policy, even with the annuals. I was really thinking you need to get accustomed to the terrain. You will be fine when you get your roots down a bit further. And of course, it suddenly went from very cold in April, when they were probably actually doing all right because they were hardy annuals, to like blistering hot temperatures in May. And I think it just stunted the roots. It really did. I think they were just really struggling. And it was at that point that I should have just stepped in and really, really watered them properly. And of course, I didn't. And the longer I left it, thinking we must get some rain, like this can't carry on. Like it can't. And of course, it did. And by the time I went and bought the pump and started importing water into the field from a borehole, it was, I think, at that point that the plants were like, no, we're just going to flower right here, right now, and we're gone, we're done. And that was the end of it. You only learn these things with hindsight. This is one of the most frustrating things that I have found about flower farming, is that you kind of get one shot at it. And if you stuff it up, like I have done so much this year, that's it. You have to wait until next year. So you spend all of winter making all these plans, and you put all these plans into fruition, and you do what you think, what you've learnt, and what you try and second guess. And then you've got one shot again next year. And it's tough that you can't keep trying over and over in the same season. There's a limit to what you can achieve, and that's quite frustrating. Number 5 on my list is to only grow what will not only survive the heat waves and the drought, but also do well. It's not a question of just managing to keep things alive. I mean, we are at this point, I am at this point trying to keep my perennials alive, but it's not good enough to just be like trying to keep stuff alive. It's got to be fabulous. It's got to be beautiful and stunning. It's got to have tall stems. Everything just has to be amazing. And so it's really got to be just growing what is going to look amazing, but also tempering this by doing this in a sensible way, because future years could be very wet. Next year could be very wet. I don't know what this super El Nino thing is going to do, whether it's, well, I have no idea. But we could have a summer that's just all rain next year, which would be a disaster, or it could be like this, or it could be worse. And so it's not about pivoting wildly to only drought tolerant plants. It's got to be a lot more nuanced than that. And finally, number 6 on my list is to really, really get the soil into a really healthy water retaining state. It is somewhat of a challenge because I'm on a slope. I'd still rather have a slope than to be flat where there's a risk of waterlogging, because it means I can leave the dahlias in the soil over the winter. Everything is perfectly free drained. I don't get any rotting off. That's amazing. And I would be having kittens if I came out and the field was under like an inch or 2 inches of water. So I don't worry too much about the slope, but the fact that the soil has not been improved adequately is something that I need to work on. It's an issue across the entire plot, to be honest, but it's most significant for the new beds 1 to 4, where Nigel cleared the turf, because the entrance to the field is area that I have cultivated since about 2023, something like that. I've been growing bits and pieces on it. Soil is definitely that lovely, crumbly, light, moisture retentive, organic mattery type of soil. It's lovely. And then as you move further down the plot, you get into the drier, chalkier. It's not crumbly per se. Like, it's hard to tell anything at the moment because everything's like dust, but it's just, well, in fact, it's not dust, it's just all really, really, really dry. So there needs to be a lot of work done on beds 1 to 4. I'm going to keep the living paths between them, and that should help, but that's going to be quite a lot of work to do over the winter to get those guys improved, and then be mindful of the other areas. You can't not improve any area really. Just because something's been cultivated years ago doesn't mean it's going to stay amazing forever. But when I look at the plants that I'm able to support in the areas that have been cultivated, I mean, I've got an apple tree in the middle of one area, and it's absolutely stunning, and it's covered in apples. It hasn't been watered at all this year, and it's surrounded by raspberries, ditto, haven't been watered. They're fruiting. There's rhubarb. There's all of these plants that Nigel's area, and it's not his fault. I just always refer to it as Nigel's area. There's not a cat's hell in chance of having that kind of productivity down there. So I'm looking at this space going, I know what your potential is, and I have to help you to get there. So that's the 6 key things. Now, in a minute, I'm going to talk to you about my plant profile of the week. So stay tuned. Okay, plant profile of the week, and it is Physostegia. This is such a cute plant. First year I've ever grown it. It's a perennial. It's a hardy herbaceous perennial, so it will vanish completely in the winter and totally freak you out, and then appear in the spring, assuming the slugs and the snails don't get it. So I bought whole. Thank you, Roland. I bought a whole load of plugs last autumn, and I bought them in white and pink to kind of tie in with the whole sort of wedding-y kind of theme, because that's my sort of target market. The pinks have actually come up quite mauve. It's not like a traditional pink in the way that I think of them as being a pink, but it's still a very, very pretty colour. They are really nice and tall, actually. Well, the pink ones, actually the mauve ones, are very nice and tall. I've got a few that are about 3 foot tall, and the rest of them are about 2 foot, which I'm very impressed with. The whites have all come up at about a foot, which is about 30 centimeters. So only good for bud vases. I haven't had enough stems, so I haven't actually sold any this year. I didn't buy that very many plants. I think I bought about 10 of each, which is not enough. Definitely need a lot more, but I thought I'll get them and test them out on the field this year and see how they get on before I go off and buy 50 or something. And I'm definitely going to buy some more. So I thought that florists would like them because I thought the colors would be lovely for the weddings. They're also a line or spike flower, so you've got this lovely tall straight stem that comes up, and then it's sort of, oh, the boys are noisy tonight. And then there are all these like bits that come off them, all these individual flower stems that come off the main spike. So the main spike will flower, and then you get all of these other ones that come off as well. And I thought, well, that looks amazing. The flowers look very delicate. They're sort of tiny tubular little flowers. They're very pretty. And as I say, the nice tall stems with the flowers at the sort of top quarter of the stem, I just thought they'd be great. And they've sort of got this sort of nice, naturally garden look to them as well. Like, they don't look sort of highly designed. They just look really, really nice. And I thought they'd be good for me because they're a perennial. And as I'm sorry about that. As part of the push to move more into perennials, I thought they'd be a good idea. So the idea is that you just plant them, water them in, and then forget them. But obviously, it's never quite that simple because when you have a dry year like this one, I've ended up watering them quite a lot. And I've got a red kite perched directly in a tree over my head. You might even be able to hear it on the recording. So he's literally sitting dead up from me. So I think this is why the cockerels are all getting a little bit upset. Everyone's now on a very high state of alert. So I've been watering them quite a lot. They were tiny little plugs. I don't even remember how small they were, but they were very, very small. They came from J. Parker's, so I get most of my plugs from, and they're just absolutely miniature. But they have done very, very well. They tolerate a wide range of soil types. Physostegia, they're really pretty adaptable to everything. They do like a moist soil, and I have been giving mine quite a bit of water, conscious of the fact that they're new. So I haven't been treating them quite as generously as the annuals, but then I haven't been starving them to death like the big perennials. They also like full sun or a light shady area. So mine are definitely in full sun. And the other great thing about them is that they are midsummer flowering. So mine have really got their skids on in the last couple of weeks or so, which is amazing because the conditions have just been getting tougher and tougher. So when they're bigger, I can propagate them by division, or I could have a stab at growing them by seed. I don't know that I will do that because my history is not great with seeds, as you know. And they spread by underground rhizomes. So that is why that they're going to make bigger and bigger clumps as time goes on. Interestingly, they're in a bed where I used to have all of my Achillea pink mix. Now they spread quite rapidly. If you've ever had Achillea, you'll know what that's like. So it's quite interesting. When I moved the Achillea out in the autumn and I put the Physostegia in, there are still bits of Achillea in there that I've missed. So I feel like it's going to be like a War of the Worlds battle to see which of these rhizomes is going to win out. Pests and diseases to watch out for with these guys: slugs and snails, which is often the case with herbaceous perennials. When the new growth comes in the spring, it's delicious and tasty. I haven't seen a slug or a snail for months and months now. It's very, very dry up here. And even when it's been wet, I've not had a problem, I think, because it's a field. And I think there just aren't a lot of them living here, like compared to, say, my garden, where I have a whole alley, which is called Slug Alley, which is in the shade, and they all live there. I've so far on the field got away with not having a slug or a snail problem. I guess they will also have an issue if they rot. Like, you never want to have your perennials sitting in sort of waterlogged soil unless they're actually perennials that like it wet. So I'm going to keep an eye on mine. It's been very interesting watching them. I didn't have enough stems to actually sell them, and I just wasn't quite sure at what point I was supposed to be doing it. So I thought, just take the pressure off, just watch them this year and see what they do, and see how many stems I'll actually be able to cut from the space that they're in, see what the yield per square meter works out, and then see how many more I actually need to buy for next year, and see what they last like in the vase, because that's always quite an interesting experiment to see what they do in like a real world situation. One last thing to tell you about before I go: I was having a rifle through Instagram earlier today, and I was looking at the profile of Y Grow. Now, Kelly at Y Grow, she is a flower farmer in Herefordshire, and she has decided to write an open letter to the Prime Minister of the UK, Andy Burnham, just highlighting the difficulties that not just cut flower farmers, but all farmers are facing in these conditions, and really pointing it out to them. And she has left the details of this on her website. Now, I will put her website in my show notes. I have signed her open letter. She's going to leave it, I think, for a certain amount of time on the website to collect as many signatures as possible. And she's encouraging flower farmers to add their details to the open letter so that it can get sent off. And I think it's really wonderful what she's done. I hope it makes a difference, and that whoever reads it will really understand what is going on for cut flower farmers in this country. So I think we should support it. So hop on over to the website, have a read of the letter, and if you agree and it's something that you want to support, then pop your details down. And hopefully together we can all make a difference. So have a wonderful, wonderful weekend. Please come back and join me on Tuesday for the next episode, and take care. All the best.